Why has driving in this country become so poor? Well, listen to my reasoning in this video. Hi, my name's Andy, this is the Q4 channel, and once again, I'm talking from the shed. So why do I think driving in this country has become so poor? Bordering on atrocious. Well, I'm going to explain it, but first, if you haven't already subscribed, please do it now. Hit the subscribe button, don't forget to hit that bell icon, that way you won't miss out on future content. And as always, if you feel like it, leave a comment. So why do I think that driving in our country has become so poor? Well, two main factors really. The first one, and the most obvious one, is how busy our roads have become. In the last 30 years, exponentially, there is more traffic on our roads. And the more roads we build, they just fill up. But because the roads are so busy, the traffic doesn't flow so well. And because of that, people get frustrated. And a frustrated driver is a reckless driver. And a reckless driver does crazy things that upset other road users and upset themselves. Because they're frustrated, they start to get angry. They start to weave in and out traffic, start to overtake at points you shouldn't overtake, start pulling out on people, cutting people up. And this happens more frequently. So the perception there is that driving has become worse. It's not so much the driving that's become worse, but the sheer volume of traffic on the road. And the fact that people just aren't giving themselves enough time to make their journey. It's that last minute thing, you know, where you jump in the car, oh, I've got to get to work, I've only got half an hour and the journey's usually 20 minutes. So you hit the smallest inconvenience, the smallest bit of traffic build-up. Now all of a sudden, you're frightened you're going to be running late, you don't want to be late for work, or a meeting, or whatever it is, a hospital appointment, etc., picking your children up. So you start doing crazy things, you start doing reckless things. And then, all of a sudden, you can hear everybody's displeasure from you as they're hitting the horns. You're cutting people, you're acting in an irresponsible way. That's one reason. The second reason, and this is the main reason I think that driving on the UK roads have become so bad, is the cars themselves. Now let me explain. The cars themselves over the last, well, since cars were invented really, have become safer and safer. The cars we drive today are the safest cars in our history. And I don't mean this as a specific brand, I mean across all cars. There used to be a time when it was a saving grace of a car firm that they sold well because it was seen as a particularly safe car. I'll use the example of Volvo. In the 70s, let's be honest, they were boxy, they were clunky looking, but they were very safe. They were the only cars that were double skinned. Because of the laws in the country that Volvo developed, they also had running lights, the first ones that had the lights on in daytime. Nowadays, all vehicles you buy new have running lights. Daylight running lights, they're called. But Volvo were the first. I remember as a child looking at, oh, he's got his lights on, and then realised every one of those brands, they have their side lights on. And my father explained to me at the time, he said, yeah, in their own country, they have to have their lights on. Because in Sweden and Norway and Denmark and places like that, they have shorter summers. So therefore, they're in the dark a lot more of the year. And therefore, to make them visible on the roads, the side lights come on as soon as you started the car. Makes sense. But instead of changing that for the rest of Europe to sell the vehicles, they just kept it there because that's the cheap option. If you can homogenise something across a whole brand, I mean, let's be honest, we used to have Marathon bars, they're now called Snickers. Why? Because the rest of the world called them Snickers. We were the only ones that were calling them Marathon bars. So the wrappers had to be made with Marathon on when everywhere else it was Snickers. The easy option was just to rebrand them in this country as Snickers, and you're only making one wrapper. You've saved money. And it was the same with Volvo. It's the same with most car companies. If they can get away with homogenising their cars so that in every country the same applies, they save money. Makes sense. So Volvo were known as a particularly safe vehicle, and they sold cars on that. Mothers wanted safe vehicles to transport their children around, and people generally wanted they just weren't very pretty, were Volvos, compared with other cars. They were very square, very boxy, very clunky looking. But they were good cars, generally. And because they were known as safe, they sold. So the rest of the car industry, who are always looking for an advantage, how can I sell my cars to you, realised that Volvo had an advantage here. So they started to add some of those features to their own cars, and then using them in their advertising as a hook to get you in to buy their vehicles. Now, a lot of safety features that came into the car industry came from the race industry, so Formula One particularly. So we used to have all-round drum brakes. Disc brakes came from Formula One. So did traction control, launch control, and ABS braking. All of these were great features on vehicles and were sold to the general public as a safety feature that was going to help you. And they did. They sold more cars because they had, and the cars that didn't have these features started to lose sales. So everybody caught up. Then we came with airbags. Then we came with side impact protection with side airbags, inertia seatbelts, and on and on and on it went. Each car company trying to outdo the next car company with the next innovation in safety. So they wanted to sell you the car not only on, doesn't it look fantastic, and look, you get alloy wheels, or now it's DAB radio and Bluetooth and everything else, connectivity. All of these were selling points, but major selling points were the safety of the vehicles. So then we got things like crumple zones, impact disbursements, kinetic energy movement. All of these were brought in as safety features. And on these safety features kept coming in. But now we've come to the point that the safety features are, well, let's just say that they're clutching at straws with safety features. They've now made it so that you can take yourself away from what you're fundamentally doing in a car, and that's driving. You are now being encouraged to be distracted from what you should be doing, which is driving a car. At the end of the day, you get into a car and you drive it irrationally, you're driving something that's about 2 tons and pretty much is a killing machine. You hit pedestrians at any decent speed, you're going to do a hell of a lot of damage. You're also going to do a hell of a lot of damage to other road users if you hit them. The cars are safer, but they're not indestructible. And the one weak point in any car, no matter how safe it is, that will take the brunt of most of an impact is us. This soft fleshy suit with crackable bones and soft internal organs and brain matter that is easily damaged is the one thing we seem to forget about when we drive less than stellarly. So, what do I mean by the cars making the driving in the UK worse? Well, I'll give you an example. First of all came cruise control. All that basically did was set a speed for you. You still had to drive the car, you still had to make sure that you were not going to run into the back of somebody else, etc. That was a straightforward thing. It made sense. It allowed you to take your foot off the accelerator and continue. Why? What was so difficult about putting your foot on the throttle and adjusting your speed for the flow of traffic in front? So the car industry thought, yeah, see what you mean. So then they made smart cruise control. Now it comes, different brands of vehicles give it different names. It can be Cruise Plus, it could be Smart Cruise, it could be a number of names. But basically what it does is this. It latches on to the vehicle in front. So if the vehicle in front all of a sudden slows down, you are supposed to slow down as well. And that's what it does. It's sensing all the time the vehicle in front. It latches onto that vehicle's speed. And as that vehicle slows down, you slow down. That was the first smart cruise control. But of course, when the car in front then started to accelerate, you had to accelerate yourself. It didn't do you for it. Now it does. The next iteration of the smart cruise was it latched onto the vehicle whether it was going faster than you or slower than you. So now you are latched onto the vehicle in front. It slows down for slower moving vehicle, your vehicle slows down, then it accelerates, your vehicle accelerates with it at a regulated distance from your car to that car. And you can change that distance. When you click on it, it'll come up with bars, 300 yards, 200 yards, 100 yards, whatever, or 50 yards. It'll latch on to that vehicle. They've got so good now, not only will it latch onto him, but if you come to a stop in the traffic, there's a pile up or something and everybody stops, it tails back, your vehicle that you're in with the smart cruise control will actually stop as well. And when that whatever danger, obstacle, whatever it is, moves, your vehicle will pull away without you touching anything. No brakes, no clutch, well, usually they're on automatics, but no brakes, no accelerator. It'll do that all for you. So what has it achieved? It's taken you away from driving the vehicle. So what do you do with this free time? You're no longer having to drive the vehicle because it's latching on. Also with these smart cruise controls comes something that's called lane drift or anti-lane drift. This is basically the sensors on the doors noticing the lines in the road, what lane you're in, and if you start to drift one way or another, it will actively push you back into that lane and keep you on the straight and narrow. So now you're sat there not really driving your vehicle at all. The one thing it will make you do is you have to have your hands on the steering wheel, or a hand, or a couple of fingers. But it will more or less drive your car for you. How is this a good thing? How is this a safety feature? But it's a feature sold and people are buying it. So now you're distracted, and what are people doing with their distracted time? They're looking at the phones, sending texts, messing around with the sat nav, messing around with the touchscreen. And it's no use the car industry when you turn on that centre column touchscreen saying, do not mess with this whilst you're driving. That was just some legal mumbo jumbo that they gave to themselves to say, hey, we told them they shouldn't do it. If they weren't looking at the road and had a crash, it's not our fault. Yet everything else in the car is designed to distract you and make it less likely that you'll do the one thing you really should be doing whilst you're in a car. And that is driving the car. Wow, who'd have thought it? Driving a car when he got into it. You see, all of these distractions, all of the better car. Also, you've got the crumple zones, impacts, the kinetic energy movements. These are things that if you do actually have a crash then, you are less likely to come away really damaged. You might be a little shook up, might have a few bruises. You're definitely going to get a bruise across your shoulder because of the seatbelt snatching you back in as you pull forward. You might have a bit of bruising and scuffing from an airbag going off and such like. But the idea is that you walk away from that crash with very little injury. Which 20, 30 years ago, if you had a crash similar to that one where you walked away injury, you could have been in hospital for a long time recovering. And this is another thing, because people know that their car's fairly safe, they also never think that a crash is going to happen to them. Whoever does, you never think to yourself, oh, I'm going to get cancer, or I'm going to be in a horrific plane crash, or I'm going to be in a car accident. No, it never happens to you, does it? It's always somebody else until it happens to you. But of course, these cars are so much safer that when it does happen, you feel almost invulnerable in these cars. You know that if you have a crash, the kinetic crumple zones and that will take most of the energy of that crash and not transfer it to your body. This is what crumple zones mean. The same if you hit a pedestrian. A lot of the front ends of cars nowadays are plastic and soft. The reason being, if they hit someone like a pedestrian, is that it's not going to harm the pedestrian as much as if it was steel or aluminium or girders. This is why the old Defender, which has just been phased out by Jaguar Land Rover, has a 1-star NCAP rating, whereas the smart car, tiny little 2-seater thing, 5 stars. Which would you rather be in a crash? I've always thought to myself, well, between those two, I'd rather be in the Defender. But that's the wrong answer, because the person who's in that little smart car is more likely to walk away from that crash without injury, because the Defender was, again, made from girders. The only thing really to give in that when it hit something at any speed was you. All of that kinetic energy was going to be transferred to your body, your internal organs, your bones, your brain, everything. So the smart car was probably the safer vehicle, although it doesn't look it on paper. If you looked in real life, you'd go, no, I won't want to be in a crash in that. It looks tiny. It looks like it's a coffin ready to be buried with me in it. But the fact of the matter is, it's got all of those safety features. Also, on cars nowadays, you have what's known as anti-collision sensors. This is when it notices somebody's pulled out or ran out in front of you, or a car's all of a sudden for no reason jammed its brakes on and you might be a little distracted, but the sensors have picked it up, give a warning and then slam the brakes on to stop you from running into that vehicle. Again, another great safety feature. But now people are starting to rely on all of these safety features instead of doing, as I keep saying, the one thing you should always be doing when you're in a car, and that's paying attention to driving the car. So these are the two main reasons, in my opinion, and I can only ever give my opinion, why I think driving on the UK roads has become so atrocious. It's the distraction and just how busy the roads are. Those two things put together, people will act recklessly, or they will act in a way so nonchalantly as they're driving something that could be a killing machine that they don't really pay attention. So they're distracted by what's in there, they're distracted by the rest of their life, let their mind drift, and that's especially if you're on dual carriageways and motorways. You hit that cruise control, literally let the car drive for you. So those are my reasonings behind why I think driving on the UK roads has become so atrocious. Now maybe you disagree with me. If you do, why not leave it in a comment down below. As always, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't do it at the beginning, come on, do it now. You know you want to. Don't forget to hit that bell icon. That way you don't miss out on future content. And as always, give it a like. Because if you give it a like, you'll have good luck for the rest of the day. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, those are my views. So, let's have a little bit of humour now, shall we? There's this newly married couple. They've just had the wedding, and they get to the honeymoon suite, and they're looking at each other. They know what's going to happen. It's not the first time they've been together, but they're getting undressed and they're giggling and laughing with each other. And as the new husband, takes his trousers off, he says, "Put them on." And she says, "You what?" He says, "Go on, put them on." She goes, "It's a bit weird request. Maybe he's being a little bit kinky. Okay, I'll play along." So she slips his trousers on, and as soon as she's got them zipped up and that, he turns around and he said, "And that's the last time you will ever wear the trousers in this relationship. Just remember, I'm the man." And she goes, oh, okay." She takes the trousers off. Then she slips out of this tiny little sexy thong she's wearing, and she holds it up to him, and tiny it is, and she says, "Put them on." And he goes, "What?" She says, "Put them on." And he's holding them up, looking at himself. He says, "I'll never get into these." And she says, "No, and you never will unless you change your blooming attitude." We all know who's really got the power in a marriage. Anyway, as always, you people out there, be happy, be healthy, but above all else, take care of yourself, because if you don't, who will? Goodbye now. I'm a simple